Welcome back. So far, we've talked about differences in personality and training and differences in language and style. It's no wonder we see communication problems between analytics and business. Now let's talk about some common problematic dynamics I see when teams interact. I'll start with an example. I bet you've been in a meeting that went something like this. There were a dozen people sitting around a strategic planning table. The CEO, Jane, said, "Before we renew our investment in this product, we really need to know how well it's working." And then she immediately left the room. The product she was talking about was an expensive sales process management system. I'll call it Sales Pro. The team was generally favorable about it, but not everyone was in agreement. And before they left, the analyst said, "We'll go back and we will go through the metrics so that we can do a complete review of Sales Pro." Following several weeks of work, analyzing the sales funnel, rate of sales closed, the Sales Pro activity across members of the different sales team, the analyst put together a detailed presentation. So everybody reconvened, but not 5 minutes into the presentation, Jane interrupted and said, "Well, wait, what is this?" Well, the lead analyst was startled and said, "Well, this is our review of how Sales Pro is working. This is what you asked for." Jane sighed. "What we need to know is not what Sales Pro does. We need to compare it to what we were doing before we got Sales Pro and compare before to after. Why do we never get what I needed?" And then she left. So the analyst left the meeting demoralized and irritated. They believe that Jane can't make up her mind, and she actually likes to make people look bad. Now, I don't think there was anything intentional on either side, but it's a typical scenario and dynamic. Over the past 35 years, I've noticed some attitudes and behaviors that only make things worse. And as we take a closer look at a few of them, consider whether you've noticed them too, and let's explore what's behind these issues. While there are several problematic behaviors to choose from, I'll highlight 3 common ones. The first one, expectations of mind reading. In the example I just described, Jane, the CEO, demonstrated a pattern that is always present in busy corporate settings. Jane made a request and promptly left. Her team was already intimidated and worried about getting things wrong, so they didn't ask any questions. They assumed they knew what she meant. She assumed they knew what she meant. As a result, several things happened. They wasted weeks of work answering the wrong question. She got angry, analysts got resentful, and the relationship is getting worse. It seems so avoidable, but this is not unusual. Leaders expect others to read their minds and know what they mean. And then when someone doesn't read their minds, they might get blamed. The more accomplished you are and the more experience you have, the busier you get, the more likely you are to leap ahead in your mind and assume that other people know what you're talking about. It's important to be specific in your requests, or at the very least, foster an atmosphere where questions and communication are encouraged at all levels. If someone else is expecting you to read their mind, respectfully ask them for more information. If the analyst had more information in that example about Sales Pro, there would have been a much more positive outcome, both in terms of what she got and how they felt. Translators need to understand things before they can translate them. We'll spend a lot of time in this course learning how to better elicit the information you need. Okay, the second pitfall is believing that complexity makes you look smart. It's really natural to be proud of our own expertise and accomplishments, and the business world and academia both value experts. But specialization also makes clear communication really important. The more unique your knowledge, the less familiar other people will be with your topic. So while it can be tempting to share your expertise using insider shorthand, it's important to weigh the value of using inscrutable language over promoting understanding. I actually had a colleague who liked to use the word trichotomize, instead of just saying that we divided the population into 3 groups. It's a real word, But how many people need to use trichotomize? Give me a break. No. There are some professionals who seem to enjoy using complex esoteric details and insider jargon to display how smart they are, even when it inhibits other people's understanding. Other times, people just aren't aware of the effect that they're having. Either way, it will not help in analytic translation to use big words. So don't be sesquipedalian. Look it up. Using unnecessarily complicated language shuts other people down. And for every one person you might impress, there's probably going to be 10 others who feel alienated. Want to know the most impressive skill for translators? Explaining complex concepts in simple language everyone can understand. So, the last pitfall I'll cover is a lack of appreciation for what other teams face. This one isn't hard to understand, so instead of going into a huge amount of detail, let's just say it's important to put ourselves in the other team's shoes. So many of the conflicts that I've seen can be attributed to unfair assumptions about what the other team experiences. As one example, analysts were getting angry because the business team hadn't been able to get them access to an important data set, so the deadline was in jeopardy. Analysts believed that the business team was not trying hard enough. But actually what was happening behind the scenes is that lawyers were blocking the release of the data over privacy concerns, and so they couldn't get the data until new agreements were signed. So it wasn't intentional. Another example, the business team was complaining about how long it took to get a report, and their perception was that the analyst must not understand how important this is. Well, the reality was that the data feed was so poor, the analysts were having to do hands-on data entry. And so it was taking way longer than it was expected to. So you get the picture. As we continue building analytic translation skills, you'll see that many of the problems you encounter can be solved with a mix of empathy, understanding, and collaboration. Consider giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. These pitfalls sound simple, but they are so critical. Don't expect people to read your mind. Make language choices that pull people together instead of separate them. Make an effort to understand what other people are really dealing with. If you want to explore further pitfalls and how to avoid them, you can refer to Chapter 5 in the book. See you next time.